president of Stavis Seafood, and Peter Chrisite, president and CEO of the Massachusetts Restaurant Association. Hey guys, welcome aboard.
Good morning.
Hi Rick, hi Jeffrey.
You know, Peter, what is going on with all this controversy of the seafood? The people are getting a bait and switch, or there's all kinds of bad news going out there.
We're loaded with puns today, aren't we, Rick?
Rick is one.
I got a million of them. Most of them stink, but I keep trying.
This is a serious story.
Do me a favor and save a few of them.
All right.
In terms of this, Jen Abelson did a well-written article in the Boston Globe where she went out to a whole bunch of retail companies and did DNA testing on the fish and discovered that some of the fish that was being sold was not the fish that the consumer thought that they were getting.
Right.
And I think that what she did here in Boston is kind of now blown into almost a national awareness.
Right.
Richard, how do you do DNA on fish to know what they are?
I'll just start. You know, Richard sells fish nationally, so
right,
I think he has so I think he has a good perspective. But if you notice in the article, they say they hired a Canadian lab to do the testing.
It doesn't matter where the lab is. DNA testing is DNA testing, and they actually have been making some great strides recently in terms of creating that ability to test with more exactness. As a matter of fact, I was on a conference call yesterday with the head of the FDA DNA sequencing program, and they were talking about having just certified 6 of their labs to do DNA sequencing and testing within there, and they've started a program where they're going to be doing a number of DNA tests over the next 4 months.
Now, so many people don't really realize how complicated fish is versus meat, and meat is a pretty simplistic category by comparison. So could you sort of make our lay person who's listening sort of understand the sort of different complications? Because I don't think when you read the Globe article, people don't understand how difficult this really is.
I guess this is one of those times where I'm going to ask you how much time I've got, because there's a lot going on here.
It is a radio show, but maybe we can start with certain points.
Well, we'll start with the first thing to keep in mind is that fish is not a one-dimensional protein. If you're buying beef, if you're buying pork, if you're buying chicken, it's all from one animal. It's from a cow or from a pig or from a chicken. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's Wagyu, there's Angus, I mean, there are all sorts of subtleties there, but you still have a limited amount of complexity to what you've got going on there. When you're talking about seafood, you're talking about a complex of species that, I think that, Peter, you were saying there's 1,700 different species that are listed on the FDA fish list.
Wow. You
know, you're talking about a complex of species. Some fish are almost identical in appearance and flavor, but totally different genus and species. And other fish are as different as could be, but genetically very similar. And the way that the FDA approaches naming fish, the creation of a common name, of a market name, of a scientific name, it partners things together that maybe shouldn't be together, and it keeps things apart that maybe should be more closely together. So when you're buying a fish in the store, when you're eating a fish in a restaurant and you're getting an experience, tastes like grouper, looks like grouper, that experience you're getting is real. We'd like to make sure that every time you do it, the fish that you're getting is really grouper, but the experience is real. And there's a lot of things that can be done and are being done in order to ensure that the seafood that you get is properly represented. My company, Stavis Seafoods, is a member of the Better Seafood Board, and I'm actually on the board of directors of that. And we've been going for over 5 years, really working to nail down all of these ambiguities to get proper weights, proper species names, everything into the fish so that we can get a level playing field on the fish that's coming into the market. But even when we do this, and even as we create this, this greater clarity, seafood will always have much more complexity, and there will be more nuance than there are with other proteins.
Now, Peter, there's so many restaurants in Massachusetts, and I assume your phone was ringing off the hook from restaurants who were very upset about this article.
Well, you know, they were upset. However, I guess if the shoe fits, you have to wear it.
Right.
I think that as I talked to the author of the article, I thought she did a good job, and I thought it was fair. However, you know, they had 48%, and that's because, to use a pun, Rick, she went where the fish were biting. She went to ethnic sushi places, and There were I think she had 48% non-compliance. Now, I guarantee you that I could go to 100 restaurants and give you 100 restaurants that are absolutely in compliance. The bottom line from the restaurant community, and what I had told the restaurant community, is, number one, the gentleman that I have to my right, the Stavis Seafood, these are the professionals. These are the people that know this. This is their living. They know the FDA fish list. They know the common names. As with any purveyor that a restaurateur uses, you form a partnership with the right people who can give you good advice. Go to them, ask them advice. Make sure you're using the right names and the right fish. Make sure that the fish that you're selling is the fish that's invoiced on your bill. Number two, if you are doing any substituting, stop doing it. You can't substitute something without telling the customer. You have to be transparent. There were people who admitted, geez, we didn't know we were doing that, but they were doing it. So, they made a mistake. Lastly, if the price seems too good to be true, guess what? It is too good to be true.
Right.
Use the professionals. Use the people who know what they're talking about, who do this for a living. They're the ones that can help give you the information you need.
Now, Richard, just another question, because doing so much work in the food business, a lot of consumers don't understand the federal standards for the seafood industry, that it's very different from meat too. It's not like the FDA, and it's the HACCP, which I'm really asking you about. Can you explain, because not all sort of suppliers like you really follow HACCP to the same level of degree, and how it really works?
Well, I think most suppliers do follow HACCP and have to, or else they're not going to be in business. The FDA, again, when you keep in mind that most other proteins are being centrally produced, so there's less plants with more pounds, you got the ability to put somebody in the plant to look at what they're making there.
Right.
There isn't that ability to do that at seafood all the way along the line. Fish is being caught in one place, it's being processed someplace else, and it's being sold from a third location. So you don't physically have the ability to have an observer in all of these locations. What the FDA has put in place is a system, and at this point it's a decade strong and a decade long and going strong, is a system called HACCP, which is Hazard Analysis of Critical Control Points. And what it means is that those of us who are the experts need to assess the entire chain from when it's caught to when it's sold and determine where there are points of risk. When you need to worry about refrigeration, which fish is prone to spoilage, which fish is prone to toxins, and we need to be able to control it, measure it, and account for it. And we're not entirely on our own. We don't create this system and set easy rules for ourselves and get a pass. The FDA comes in and inspects plants. We get the FDA coming 1, 2, 3 times a year. They look through our files, they look at our controls, they look at our import records. They audit and make sure that what we're doing is correct and that it is controlling the risks of seafood. And this methodology is expanding to other products as well, other food products, because it's been found to be a very safe and effective, as well as efficient way of controlling the risks of the food that goes onto your table.
Peter, I was going to ask you a follow-up question too, is the percentage of restaurants that, look, the sample was pretty small, and I agree with you. I bet 95% of the restaurants are in compliance. There's always going to be a small percent that aren't in compliance on any issue, whether it's health codes or whatever.
Sure. I think, I would agree with that, Rick. I guarantee you now, after the article, 95% of them are. So these sorts of things aren't always bad. They're good, and they're good for the consumer when they get people to clean up their act and to learn more, frankly, and to seek out people that have the ability to help you. As I read that article, by the way, I didn't pretend to know all of this before starting with this. I've learned a lot from then to now.
Right.
I'm amazed at the global environment that we're in with seafood, as with so many other products, by the way. I was amazed at the cultural differences that I think the article pointed out. I think I was also there's regional differences around this country, and I'm sure Rick could speak to that. I mean, Richard could speak to that far better than me. But when it comes to what's a cod here? What do we know as a cod? What do they know as a cod, as a black cod in Alaska and the Pacific Coast? And what may be
Even
common term there may mean something
and
different
even certain
here.
fishes I order here, and when
Yeah.
I order when I go to Canada, they seem to be different when I'm in Canada.
And
Because of the different classifications for them. And that's-
I'll let Richard speak to that, but I think that they are, by the way.
They are. I mean, when I order like bluefish in Boston, I order bluefish in Montreal. It's not even the same fish.
No, you're right. And I think that when you're talking about country to country, that makes sense. But you're hitting upon the crux of a lot of the ambiguity. And the one I agree with you that this series of articles was very well done. It was very well researched, and everything that is in the articles is accurate. I don't think it gives the whole picture, because it gives the impression that the great majority of what's happening is with the intent to deceive and to defraud. And in reality, there's some out there. I think every industry has bad players, and none of us want that to happen. But in reality, the majority of what's happening here isn't about defrauding. It has to do with, as you said, number one, the complexity and the knowledge base that the people who are serving the product has. But even more importantly, it has to do with some of the ambiguities that are in the system as a result of the patchwork enforcement and patchwork regulation regarding seafood. And black cod that you just talked about is a great example. It's been called black cod out on the West Coast for generations. It has been called black cod in New England uniformly for the last 20 years. It's an item which is closer to Chilean sea bass in terms of flavor and texture than any other fish, and it's a very expensive and prized fish. Nobody's going to be serving black cod with an attempt to defraud customers who want cod. Cod's a $3 item, black cod's an $11 item. But if you go and you take away the ability to call black cod, and you start calling it by sablefish, which is the only FDA-approved name, you've just
No one's buying it.
You've just created a situation where people who want their favorite fish don't know where to find it.
Well,
and the black cod.
On that note, we're gonna take a break. I'm gonna let Rick take us to break. We're gonna come back and continue to discuss this.